At Sierra, discover great deals on top brand workout gear, like high-quality walking shoes, which might lead to another discovery.
40,000 steps, baby. Who's on top now, Karen?
You've taken the office step challenge a step too far. Don't worry, though. Sierra also has yoga gear. It might be a good place to find your zen. Discover top brands at unexpectedly low prices. Sierra, let's get moving.
They say to only bring what you can carry. So with the all-new 2025 Ford Expedition Tremor, bring a lot. Like 3 dirt bikes, a few tents, an entire crew ready to make memories. A panoramic 24-inch display, and the confidence to push your limits. The all-new 2025 Ford Expedition Tremor.
Always consult the owner's manual before off-road driving. Know your terrain and trail difficulty and use appropriate safety gear. Max payload varies based on accessories and vehicle configuration. See label on door jamb for carrying capacity of a specific vehicle. Always properly secure cargo.
Put on your big boy pants and let us know who the pedophiles are. Simple.
Back in 2023, Kash Patel was not the FBI director. He was a braggadocious Trump world media figure promoting a bunch of different conspiracy theories. This is him talking to right-wing podcaster Benny Johnson.
We have an election coming up, and we need to adjudicate this matter at the polls. God knows the FBI and DOJ aren't going to do anything. But how are you going to reward the FBI with a new headquarters building after their illegal surveillance on Donald Trump continues with a reauthorization of FISA, and we can't even get basic documents out? This is why America hates Congress.
The documents in question are the Epstein files. Based on where you sit, those files could mean different things. There are the very real law enforcement documents about Jeffrey Epstein, who was arrested on federal sex trafficking charges in 2019. He died in his cell awaiting trial. The FBI says it was suicide. But there is also the conspiracy theory that Epstein kept a list of rich and important clients who had sex with minors and who he was blackmailing. Patel and Dan Bongino and J.D. Vance and Pam Bondi have all at one time or another referred to some kind of list, which made it all the more surprising when Kash Patel tweeted Saturday, "The conspiracy theories just aren't true. Never have been. It's an honor to serve the President of the United States, real Donald Trump, and I'll continue to do so for as long as he calls on me." To understand this very public about-face and the intra-MAGA drama around it, I called up Anna Merlan from Mother Jones, and I asked her, how did we get here?
The main thing is that on July 6th, the FBI and the DOJ released this unsigned memo saying essentially that they do not believe that Jeffrey Epstein was engaged in a blackmail operation, that he didn't have a client list of people who are believed to have engaged in sex crimes against women and girls alongside him, and that they believe he died by suicide.
For people who'd heard Patel and Bongino promote the list idea for years, this was shocking.
There has been a really profound belief on the right and in MAGA circles that the government under President Biden and previous presidents were covering up, horrifying truths about who engaged in sex crimes along with Jeffrey Epstein, and that when Donald Trump came back to office, he would reveal all. And of course, like Kash Patel, like Dan Bongino, plenty of people in President Trump's administration or with close ties to the administration are, in the right-wing media sphere. So there's endless amounts of tape of them talking about this stuff over the years and, crying out for a disclosure that now they're in the awkward position of having to explain why it has not come from President Trump and his administration.
Today on the show, how the Epstein conspiracy broke containment and why the Trump administration can't seem to make it go away. I'm Lizzie O'Leary, and you're listening to What Next TBD, a show about technology, power, and how the future will be determined. Stick around. This podcast is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game, shifting a little money here, a little there, and hoping it all works out? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can be a better budgeter and potentially lower your insurance bill, too. You tell Progressive what you want to pay for car insurance, and they'll help you find options within your budget. Try it today at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states. If you're running a business, you know every customer conversation matters. Whether you're a one-person operation or have a large team that needs better collaboration tools, OpenPhone is the #1 business phone system that streamlines and scales your customer communications. OpenPhone works through an app on your phone or computer, and your team can share one number and collaborate on customer calls and texts like a shared inbox. That way, any teammate can pick right up where the last person left off, keeping response times faster than ever. Plus, OpenPhone's AI agent can be set up in minutes to handle calls after hours, answer questions, and capture leads, so you never miss a customer. See why over 60,000 businesses trust OpenPhone to manage their businesses' calls and texts. OpenPhone is offering What Next TBD listeners 20% off of the first 6 months at openphone.com/TBD. That's openphone.com/TBD. And if you have existing numbers with another service, OpenPhone will port them over at no extra charge. OpenPhone. No missed calls, no missed customers. You cover this stuff and you're deeply enmeshed in it. And I have to admit that when I was preparing for this conversation, it kind of broke my brain trying to unpack the Jeffrey Epstein conspiracy theory to go back and figure out how this became such an article of faith in the MAGA right. Where does this all start?
Well, the first thing I would say is if you want to read really great reporting about Jeffrey Epstein and what actually happened, Julie K. Brown at the Miami Herald has been covering this for, a decade or more, and is really good at laying out, what is and is not real. For instance, she and other people who have covered all of these criminal and civil cases against Epstein will tell you they do not think there is a quote-unquote client list. They don't think that that is a real thing that exists, separate from his address book, which of course does exist, and that we have seen since portions of it were published by Gawker in 2015. So it can be very hard, right, to separate the conspiracy theories with what actually happened, partly because so much information about Epstein has never been released. Genuinely, there is a lot of mystery about this guy, and partly because a lot of the people involved in this discussion have either unintentionally or on purpose confused what is true and what isn't, especially in the right-wing media sphere. But what we can say is that during this last presidential election, a lot of President Trump's most ardent, loudest fans and proxies, people like Elon Musk, people like, I don't know if you remember Aaron Rodgers, the NFL player.
Yeah.
Implied that the Epstein list was going to come out and that Jimmy Kimmel was going to be on it, which Kimmel, of course, immediately and rightly, I would say, threatened him with a lawsuit. This became, for lack of a better word, kind of a crude guessing game and a game of suggestion about here are the powerful people I think are on the list. And of course, the MAGA right was very eager to name powerful Democrats and people on the left that they believed were on it. So part of the reason this has become such a mess is that people are kind of personally and politically motivated to make suggestions about who is on the quote-unquote list that can't be falsified, right? Can't be proven true or false with the current amount of evidence we have.
One of the things that I find fascinating, and one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you, is because so much of this seems to mirror a kind of, I don't know if it's right to call it a playbook or just a pattern that we have seen in the far-right internet with QAnon, with Pizzagate, that things seem to be seeded with right-wing media figures and then travel out to the people who consume that media. How do you see that sort of conspiracy machine working online?
Well, the most successful conspiracy theories all have a grain of truth in them, something real that you can pin them on and have a degree of emotional appeal.
Right, nobody's saying Jeffrey Epstein was not a pedophile and a scary person.
Exactly. So when I first started covering Pizzagate, when it first started happening, and then QAnon after it, There wasn't actually a lot of discussion about Epstein yet, which is super interesting because this was like 2015 and his first conviction was in 2008. It was just not yet a part of the cosmology. But there was a huge amount of concern, obviously, about sexual abuse of children and these unfounded claims that there's, a cabal of elites ritually abusing children in secret, and taking a substance called adrenochrome from their bodies, like stuff that is much more, all evidence suggests that is not happening, right? But this idea of caring deeply about child sexual abuse and wanting to hold perpetrators accountable is both really powerful and is the seed for a lot of really successful, like far-traveling conspiracy theories. And in the case of these specific ones, it can be confusing because it's not like it's coming from a power center and moving out to the MAGA base. It's sort of coming both from the outer circles in and the inner circles back out. Both Pizzagate and QAnon have drawn from centuries of conspiracy theories, things like the blood libel, which hold, a conspiracy theory from the Middle Ages about Jews ritually abusing Christian children in secret that was used as a justification for violence against Jewish communities, satanic panic claims from the 1980s. Like a lot of this is in Pizzagate and QAnon circles is stuff that circulated during previous conspiracy eras and then was sort of brought back in. And then we have stuff like the Epstein case that is provable, is true, and there are still a lot of open questions that was also brought back in. This particular set of things is also not helped by the fact that a lot of really powerful people have talked about it from very big megaphones and have used it to promote their grudges, their suspicions, their, suggestions about certain people or groups, like we saw people like Elon Musk and Chaya Raichik from Libs of TikTok doing this in the lead up to the election is like, oh, I bet all these Democrats in Hollywood aren't sleeping knowing that the Epstein list is going to be revealed. Like it's very obvious, right, what they're doing. So it's a pretty chaotic information environment, which again is great for a lot of the people involved. It's really the place where they're comfortable working.
Yeah, it feels like the actual Epstein case was like a Trojan horse for a variety of bad faith actors or conspiracy theorists or just people who want to sow chaos, like all kind of climbing through the walls of the 2024 presidential campaign together.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. It worked really well, too.
Why do you think this began to build such a head of steam in the last presidential campaign?
I think that the reason why this was such a powerful argument during the last presidential campaign is it was actually part of a larger sort of wave of anger among Trump voters about all these things that they felt that they had been lied to. In a way, I would say that like the primary anger is about COVID, right? And the things that they feel that they were forced to do during COVID, vaccines, lockdowns, very unpopular things. And so during the 2024 election, there was a lot of discussion about disclosure of, the real truth behind COVID, promotion of things like the unproven lab leak theory. There was sort of generally a lot of anger about the prosecution of January 6th rioters and this idea that there was going to be a reveal of the real truth there. Basically, this narrative started to take hold among Trump's fans and followers that when he came back into office, he was going to reveal all of these secrets and that he was the only sort of outsider candidate who could do it, which is wild, right? He had already been the president. He hadn't done any of this during his previous administration. And in the case of Epstein, he was friends with Epstein for years. They knew each other socially.
Which he has said, yeah.
Which he said, though more recently he said that he wasn't on Epstein's plane in a Truth Social post, which is not true. He was, as was Robert F. Kennedy Jr. several times, which, doesn't mean that they're implicated in sex crimes, but does mean that they were, social friends with Jeffrey Epstein. So yeah, I think generally Trump, his proxies, his supporters, his family all found a really fertile ground in saying, we are the only people who are going to tell you the truth, including about things that will make other powerful people look bad. And that really is one of the things that swept him back into the White House.
One of the things that I've been really interested in, just in charting over the past 6 months, is how far-right internet theories, things like the Great Replacement Theory, things that have their roots, say, in Charlottesville in 2017, have now become a part of mainstream MAGA discourse. And I wonder, when you look at the accelerant on the quote-unquote Epstein list, would that have been possible in an era where we didn't have the ability for everyone to communicate with a tiny computer in their pocket, where we didn't have X under Elon Musk's leadership. Like, it feels like those things have added tremendous fuel to the fire.
Yeah, they definitely have. I mean, that's the thing, is we have this enormous alternative media ecosystem that we didn't have when the Epstein case first broke, right, in 2008. We have this extremely effective, loud, heavily monetized group of people who are able to promote alternate claims 24/7 on an extremely powerful platform like Twitter, X. But, I will say that some of this stuff happened even in eras when there was no social media, like the JFK assassination. There were conspiracy theories and suspicions about that pretty much from the time it happened. And, in the absence of social media, that stuff played out in newspapers, letters to the editor, like public rallies. There wasn't the kind of turbocharged ability to have this discourse with everyone on Earth in the way that it is happening now.
When we come back, the people who turbocharged this discourse are now stuck answering to their base, and that base is mad. This episode is brought to you by Agency. While single agents can handle specific tasks, the real power comes when specialized agents collaborate to solve complex problems. But there's a fundamental gap. There is no standardized infrastructure for these agents to discover, communicate with, and work alongside each other. That's where Agency comes in. The Agency is an open-source collective building the Internet of Agents, a global collaboration layer where AI agents can work together. It will connect systems across vendors and frameworks, solving the biggest problems of discovery, interoperability, and scalability for enterprises. With contributors like Cisco, Crew AI, LangChain, and MongoDB, Agency is breaking down silos and building the future of interoperable AI. Shape the future of enterprise innovation. Visit agency.org to explore use cases now. That's agntcy.org. Americans spend an average of 90% of their time indoors. But did you know indoor air can be up to 100 times more polluted than outdoor air? Breathe easy with Air Doctor, the award-winning air purifier that eliminates 99.99% of dangerous contaminants like allergens, viruses, smoke, gases, mold spores, and more. Air Doctor was voted Best Air Purifier by Newsweek, so it's no surprise that 98% of Air Doctor customers agree their home's air feels cleaner, safer, and healthier. Unlike other purifiers, Air Doctor captures invisible particles 100 times smaller than standard HEPA filters. Head to airdoctorpro.com and use promo code TBD to get up to $300 off today. Air Doctor comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee, plus a 3-year warranty, and $84 value free. Get this exclusive podcast-only offer now at airdoctorpro.com. That's airdoctorpro.com and use promo code TBD. You know what doesn't belong in epic summer plans? Getting burned by your old wireless bill. You should be planning beach trips and barbecues, and your wireless bill should not be holding you back. That's why you should switch to Mint Mobile. Even Slate's president, Charlie Kammerer, is using Mint Mobile, and he says more people should be trying this out. It was really easy to switch providers. The SIM card was shipped to his home. They let him use his existing phone, and he didn't even have to change his phone number. He's on the $15 a month deal and is getting unlimited talk and text over their 5G network at literally a fraction of what he was paying with someone else. He thinks the Mint Mobile deal is amazing. Say goodbye to your overpriced wireless plans, jaw-dropping monthly bills, and unexpected overages. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. This year, skip breaking a sweat and breaking the bank. Get this new customer offer and your 3-month unlimited wireless plan for just $15 a month at mintmobile.com/whatnext. That's mintmobile.com/whatnext. Upfront payment of $45 required, equivalent to $15 per month. Limited time new customer offer for first 3 months only. Speeds may slow above 35 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Taxes and fees extra. See Mint Mobile for details. I want to understand how we got to this week, where some of the sort of players who were on the fringes maybe a few years ago now hold real positions of authority. Kash Patel, Dan Bongino. How are we now in a place where they are on the side of trying to dial back some of the flames that they fanned?
Yeah, it's interesting. I do think that's a bit of an unanswered question. We don't have a lot of insight into why the DOJ and the FBI decided to release this unsigned memo, making these Epstein conclusions. They also released some tape from outside Epstein's cell that they said would help prove that he did die by suicide and nobody entered his cell. Wired has done some excellent reporting pointing out that that footage was edited. It might have just been put through, Adobe to upload, but nonetheless, it bears marks of having been edited. So it's interesting because in a lot of ways, the people who went from the right-wing and conspiracy ecosystem into President Trump's orbit seem really unprepared for this, Like Patel and Bongino genuinely do not seem prepared for the level of rage that they are facing. And it is so interesting to me because they have been part of this ecosystem. They have to know how this works, but I just, I didn't think they thought the leopards would eat their face, to use an internet term.
This week, we had the House Speaker, Mike Johnson, telling right-wing podcaster and plagiarist Benny Johnson that he supported the release of the Epstein files. And that, to me, felt like a big moment because here we have the Speaker of the House not doing, I think, what the Trump administration would like him to do.
Yes, it is very interesting. Mike Pence also said that he thinks the time for disclosure is now. Remember him, the vice president from Trump's first term? A lot of people who are close enough to the waterfall to see it, but not close enough themselves to get wet are like, yeah, I think that people should tell the truth on this. It's kind of a winning issue, right? Nobody is going to get anywhere with their voters or their public by saying, I don't think we should release these files. Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, is in an interesting position of having to both, hold herself out as a champion of transparency, as so many Trump officials do, while also saying that there's stuff that she cannot release, which, for the record, is probably true. There are probably things in the Epstein evidence files from his various criminal and civil cases that involve, for instance, child sexual abuse material that cannot be released ever. That would be a crime. So, yeah, it's really interesting. A lot of the people in the right-wing media ecosystem who are calling for the files to be released are not in a position where they have to figure out how to do that legally. But it's a very powerful and popular position to take. So they'll definitely keep doing it.
We throw around, or they throw around, these words like the files and the list, and it is not necessarily clear to me what exactly we are talking about. Jeffrey Epstein was prosecuted for a number of crimes. Obviously, there would be like a large amount of legal material going along with that, including child sex abuse material, which you mentioned. But then this famed client list, I'm using air quotes, like, what are we talking about? What is the thing?
There's a couple things going on here. One is that Epstein had an address book, his infamous little black book, which does contain phone numbers and a really insane amount of information about all of these powerful people. But it also contains information for people like, his gardener and somebody who's driven him. Leland Nally, who's a writer and filmmaker, called everyone on the list for Mother Jones a few years ago and wrote about the results. That is not a client list. That is not a list of people who engaged in sex crimes along with Epstein. But in the public imagination, there has come to be this sense that maybe there is a discrete list of people who Epstein was blackmailing over sex crimes. And again, journalists like Julie K. Brown, who have covered this for a long time, have said that they do not believe that such a list exists. But what we do have are the address books, flight logs, and then tons and tons and tons of court materials, a lot of which have never been made public, from Epstein's first prosecution, from Ghislaine Maxwell's prosecution, his ex-girlfriend and pimp, who's now serving 20 years for sex trafficking, FBI files. Like, if you look on the FBI vault, there are a lot of materials about Epstein, but not all of them. Some of them are heavily redacted. So it's actually understandable in this case that the public has a little bit of squishiness around what actually exists in public and what doesn't. And also, when you say there is no Epstein client list as a member of President Trump's administration, you sound like you're covering something up, because it is an article of faith among MAGA that a discrete client list of the people who engaged in sex crimes exists and that it is deliberately being withheld. And so they gain nothing from, in this case, probably telling the truth, which is there probably is no such discrete list of people.
So then you are left with this squishiness on the part of the administration and people like Marjorie Taylor Greene telling the New York Times it's a full reversal of what was all said beforehand, and people are just not willing to accept it. It doesn't feel like that is going to die down.
It is super interesting because a lot of people who are criticizing the administration, I have not seen them do so before. Marjorie Taylor Greene, Tucker Carlson, Ann Coulter. I mean, Ann Coulter probably has at some point. She sort of criticizes everybody, but there is this really acrid, ongoing criticism, not just of the administration, but of Trump personally for not stepping in. People like Mike Flynn, who is like an ex-Trump world figure who's also been sort of heavily involved in other conspiracy stuff, was an early supporter of QAnon before kind of publicly disavowing it. There are a lot of people here making really harsh criticisms of Trump who never have previously. Elon Musk, famously, James O'Keefe of Project Veritas. All these people who I have never seen criticize, a single thing Trump has done are now all the way in the pool on this one.
Are there any lessons that we can draw from previous right-wing conspiracy theories, or any conspiracy theory, I guess, that might create a roadmap for how this could end?
I don't think this ever really goes away. I think this enters the realm of things like the JFK assassination or the death of Clinton aide Vince Foster, who died by suicide but is widely believed in right-wing circles not to have, and became part of this conspiracy theory about the Clintons, literally killing their enemies, which I should stress is not true. Hillary Clinton, don't come to my house. But I think that there are some things that, because they cannot be answered to the public's satisfaction, just enter sort of a permanent world of suspicion. And Epstein is going to be one of them.
I am curious about the Democrats' role in this. Now you seem to have a few Democrats saying, release the files. I can't tell. Are they just shitposting?
Yeah, they seem to be shitposting a little bit. I think they're enjoying the ability to do to Trump what Trump world figures have done to them for so long, which is, accusing them of being evil, demonic, covering things up. My colleague, Dan Friedman, wrote about this and wrote about specifically it's pretty careless to, for instance, suggest that there is a client list that, might not really exist. It's maybe a little bit careless to engage in this kind of mudslinging, but at the same time, I don't know. Can you blame them? All 19 Democrats on the House Judiciary Committee wrote a letter, about Epstein stuff, demanding releases. A lot of high-profile Democratic lawmakers on Twitter have been kind of making hay with this. They're definitely enjoying the opportunity to do this.
All of this makes me think about where we started our conversation, which is with Kash Patel. Because if I take my mind back to 2017, 2018, there was a different kind of person in the Trump White House. Maybe right-wing, but with some kind of longer-term GOP bona fides. You would have your Bill Barrs or John Bolton, someone like that. And now those people have been replaced with full-on right-wing media figures. And I don't know that there is any other logical conclusion from stacking a cabinet or stacking a White House with people who made their names on the back of conspiracy theories.
Yeah, it's almost like there was no possible other way for this to happen. Trump officials keep sort of promising these disclosures that they know are important to the MAGA base, not just Epstein, but, stolen election claims. Kash Patel also claimed that the FBI was looking into whether protests in downtown Los Angeles recently over immigration stuff were influenced by the Chinese government. These very, very out there claims that would only make sense if you were really, really, really deep in this world. But so they keep making these promises that they know play well to the base, that they know do well on social media, but they haven't fully thought through the fact that they are on the other side of the equation now. They are the people who actually have to make the disclosures. They have to open the files. They have to go into these rooms and dig the stuff out. I think it's like some of it is probably literally not knowing how government works or where to find this stuff. And some of it is just not thinking through these claims and promises before they make them. So now they find themselves in a very ironic position.
Trump seems to want to wash his hands of this, sort of saying, oh, yeah, but Bondi should release whatever she thinks is credible. Do you think that is something that his constituents will allow? Can he wash his hands of this?
No, I think there's a huge amount of frustration over, like he posted something on Truth Social calling the Epstein story, fake, kind of cooked up by his opponents, a distraction. And that got a really, really, really bad response from sort of the key MAGA figures and the right-wing public. People really do not want to hear that from Trump. And there's a huge sort of sense of betrayal every time he makes a claim like that. So it's interesting. It's interesting to watch him try to get this to go away and have it not happen in the way that he is used to. Because obviously Trump has had a lot of controversies that, disappear and that he manages to move the public onto other things. So I think it's a bit unsettling for him that this one is not going the same way.
Anna Merlan, thank you so much for your reporting and for coming on to talk about it.
Thanks for having me.
Anna Merlan is a reporter at Mother Jones. And that is it for our show today. What Next TBD is produced by Patrick Fort. Our show is edited by Evan Campbell. Mia Lobel is the executive producer here at Slate, and TBD is part of the larger What Next family. And if you're looking for more great Slate shows to listen to, check out Wednesday's episode of What Next. They talk about the Trump administration's strategy of deporting people to countries they've never even been to. I'm Lizzie O'Leary. Thanks so much for listening.